Which of these three cameras might be the right one for you? The a7C II, the a7 IV, or the a7 V? Let's find out. Jared Polin, Photo.com, and like I said at the beginning of this video, we are going to compare these three cameras right here to help you decide which one might be the right one for you. Now, I have hands-on real-world reviews of each one of these cameras, and they are linked down below. I also have free user guides linked down below for each one of these cameras, where those videos are going to help you set up your camera, where I run you through the menus for photos and videos, talk about different lenses that you can use, as well as what all of the buttons do. Now, before we get into the comparison, there's a couple of housekeeping notes I want to touch base on. One of those is I like to give check marks. You're going to hear me give check marks for this or that or something else. Do they mean something? I don't know. We'll find out. They really don't mean very much, but I like giving check marks nonetheless. Also, you might notice this. This is supposed to be the a7C II, but this is the original a7C. We don't have a C2 here at the studio, but that's why this is standing in here. So just pretend that this is the a7C II. To kick off this comparison, we're going to start with the differences between these bodies. Starting with the a7C II, you can see that it's a smaller retro style body that's about 22% lighter than the other two that are up here. And there's no vertical grip available, just a dumb extension grip that's $180. Now, it has minimal custom function buttons, there's no joystick, and the EVF is off to the side as well as being much smaller. Now let's talk about the a7 IV and the a7 V. Both of these cameras have nearly the same exact body and buttons. The only main difference is the touchscreens, which we'll touch on a little bit later. Both of these accept grips for double the battery life and vertical shooting functionality, and both have joysticks and more buttons overall. As you can see, the a7C II is a smaller, more retro style body. Now, if you have small hands, that's perfectly fine. If you have large hands, it's probably still pretty good, but like we said in the notes, you can't get an extension grip that actually does anything other than be an extension grip. Whereas with these two, as you can see with the grips that we have on the cameras on the side, you can get vertical grips which give you two batteries and the ability to shoot vertical, of course horizontal, and have other function buttons all the way around. You have so many more customizable buttons with these two cameras right here that I'm gonna go ahead and give them check marks. But if it's all about size and smaller is okay for you, then you're gonna get a check mark. And if you really like tiny, then I get a check mark. Now we're going to talk about the screens on the back of these cameras. The a7C II and the a7 IV share the same 3-inch 1.03 million dot vari-angled touchscreen. Now the only difference between these two is that you have a swipe and tile menu on the a7C II. It's actually newer by a couple of years than the a7 IV, so as you're going to see throughout this video, it's gotten some extra little perks that the a7 IV did not have. Now moving on to the a7 V screen, you have a 3.2-inch 2.1 million dot 4-axis touchscreen with DCI P3 support, which is the same exact screen as the flagship A1 II. It also has the latest swipe menus and tile menus, just like the a7C II. Now, in terms of quality of panel, the a7 V by far blows these two out of the water. These were using some older panel technology, and the quality of those screens versus the EVF, if you put your eye up to it, is not even close. So they don't have the brightest or best quality screens on the back. Where the a7 V shines this time around is that Sony has updated to a 4-axis screen that tilts and pans and swivels and just allows you to do so much more freely, better attached to the back of the camera, or flip to the side, or when you're shooting vertical. It is just a much better system, so we're gonna give it 4 axes of check marks. Moving on to the viewfinders, starting with the a7C II. This one has the smallest EVF of all of the cameras up here. Now, it comes in at 2.36 million dots with 120 frames per second refresh rate. You will also notice that it is off to the side and not in the middle of the camera. It's more like a rangefinder style of EVF because it's off to the side. Now, as a left eye shooter myself, it's kind of awkward to get my face up in there versus having it in the middle. More so that it's actually super tiny is more of the issue, but it still does get the job done. The a7 IV and the a7 V share the same exact EVF. A 3.69 million dot EVF with a 120 frames per second refresh rate. So it has a much higher quality EVF. You will notice the difference. So if you're someone who doesn't mind having a smaller EVF and the rangefinder style, then this might be the right choice for you. But if you want something more traditional with a better quality EVF, then these two cameras right here will get the job done. Let me jump in here and let you know that this video is brought to you by Squarespace. If you're looking to build your very own online portfolio, use what I've been using for my personal website at jaredpolin.com for more than 15 years. I use it because it's simple, easy, affordable, and I don't need to know any coding. To get your 14-day free trial, head on over to squarespace.com/FronosPhoto. If you decide that it's for you, use the code FronosPhoto at checkout to get 10% off your first order. Now, let's get back to the video. So if I had to choose a body style or a body design for myself to purchase, it would be either the a7 IV or the a7 V's body design. Like I said, they're basically the same bodies with some subtle tweaks here and there. This is fine if you want small, compact, lighter, easier to travel with, but if you want something more traditional, something that feels slightly better in the hands, then these two are going to be a better option. But now that we got the bodies out of the way, let's jump into what the image sensors are inside of these cameras. The a7C II and the a7 IV share the exact same 33 megapixel full frame BSI CMOS sensor that's powered by the original Bionz XR processor. Now keep in mind this sensor has a very slow readout speed at around 67 milliseconds, so you're gonna get rolling shutter or the jelloing effect if shooting moving subjects when you're in the electronic shutter. This is definitely prevalent when you are trying to shoot something and you're panning like I did when I photographed hockey with the a7 IV. You can see that the stanchions are not straight up and down. That's because of the slow readout speed. On the flip side, the a7 V has a brand new 33 megapixel full frame partially stacked BSI CMOS sensor that's powered by the brand new Bionz XR2 processor, which makes this camera more efficient in terms of battery life, and it also does more, which we'll talk about later on. Now this sensor has the fastest scan rate up here with a 12 millisecond readout speed, making it 4.5 times faster than the other two. It also offers the most dynamic range out of the three when using the mechanical shutter. If you're looking for the camera with the best sensor of these three, it's going to be the newest, the a7 V. Now with that being said, that doesn't mean you can't get quality images from the a7 IV's 33 megapixel sensor. You are going to get fantastic results there when you use the mechanical shutter. But when you start using the electronic shutter, you want to make sure that you are not shooting something that is moving. It is a last resort that you use the electronic shutter in this camera, and this camera is primarily designed to be used with that electronic shutter. So check mark is going to the a7 V. Now this next section will point out one of the biggest differentiators between these cameras. We're going to talk about the frame rates you can get when shooting stills. Now since the a7C II and the a7 IV are for all intent and purposes the same exact cameras with the same sensors, they are going to get the same frames per second. And that is 10 frames per second with both electronic and mechanical shutter in 12-bit RAW, or 6 frames per second when shooting in 14-bit uncompressed or lossless compressed RAW. So basically, if you want to get the best quality RAW files out of this camera, you're not getting that 10 frames per second, you're getting that 6. The a7 V will give you the same 10 frames per second, but you also can do 30 frames per second with the electronic shutter. One was 10 frames a second for both. This is 10 and 30, so that is a big deal. Also, both electronic and mechanical in this camera are 14-bit RAW files. There is no true uncompressed option this time around, only lossless compressed. It has a speed boost option to take you up to 30 frames per second if you prefer to shoot at a lower frame rate, but still have the highest frame rate available at a simple push of a button. It has a 30 frames per second pre-capture RAW shooting mode, which can be adjusted from 3/100ths of a second down to 1 full second. It also has a 199 megapixel pixel shift mode. There's a good reason why I didn't mention pre-capture and speed boost with the a7C II and the a7 IV is because they don't have it. But that wasn't a big deal back when it came out because no other cameras had it at the time that these were released, at least to the best of my knowledge. That came a little bit later. But this one certainly does. Now let me explain to you pre-capture real fast. It is the ability to basically go back in time and grab an image that you would have missed because you were too slow to shoot it. A prime example is a bird. If you are waiting for a bird to take off and fly, as long as you are focused on that bird, your finger is pressed halfway down, you are buffering images. As soon as the bird flies and you press that shutter button and hold it down, you're getting all of those images that were pre-captured saved to the card and any other images that you take after it, allowing you to pluck out the perfect moment after the fact. You are literally going back in time to see Huey Lewis and the news. Now, of course, that's with the electronic shutter of the a7 IV. These cameras, like I mentioned earlier, are not meant to be shot with the electronic shutter. It is a last resort option when you absolutely need to be silent. Let me jump in here real quick because I want to show you FROPAK 4 in action on this photo right here, and it looks absolutely incredible, starting with Blue's Clues, followed by Brooklyn. We've got C41, Copper Tone, DeLorean, High C, Kaleidoscope, Mel Brooks, Saltwater Taffy, Thick, and Wet Hot American Summer. But my all-time favorite from FROPAK 1, with one click of a button here, we've got Skittles, and it goes boom. But new and exclusive to FROPAK 4, we've got 4 custom adaptive Lightroom presets called Face Enhance, Full Body Skin Enhance, Eye Only Enhance, and Background Blur. So look, if you want to speed up your RAW workflow or give yourself a great starting point or also edit on the go in Lightroom Mobile, because these presets work on JPEGs and RAW on the go, we created 14 all new custom Lightroom presets that you can check out right now at froknowsphoto.com/FROPAK4. While you're over there, you can play with the sliders to see the befores and the afters. And if you decide to pick them up right now, they are currently on sale. Or if you want to save even more, you can get the Grand Slam bundle that includes FROPAK 1, 2, 3, and 4. And of course, Skittles is included. Now, let's get back to the video. Now, the fact that this camera shoots 30 frames per second is an important thing to talk about because one of the major selling points over the years when Sony came out with the E-mount is that there were a lot of third-party lenses available, your Sigmas, your Tamrons, those types of lenses where you can use them here. They're generally less expensive and you're still going to get great results. Well, if you put a third-party lens on these two cameras and you shoot at 10 frames per second, you're going to get 10 frames per second. But if you take the same third-party lens and put it onto the a7 IV and try shooting at 30 frames per second, you will see that you cannot. There are limitations that Sony has on those lenses that get attached here that dumb it down to roughly 15 frames per second. So where that didn't matter a couple of years ago, and that's why third-party options were so popular and a lot of people went with Sony cameras, because you didn't lose anything, you now might lose the capability to get 30 frames per second. So keep that in mind when you're shooting with third-party lenses on an a7 IV. The way that you get 30 frames per second is you buy Sony's first-party glass. It's going to unlock that ability to get the full potential of the a7 IV. Moving on to card slots. The a7C II has one UHS 2 SD card slot, whereas the a7 IV and the a7 V have 2 card slot options. One of the options is a CF Express A card slot that also doubles as an SD card slot, so you could use one or the other, and it has a second slot that is just for UHS 2 SD cards, so you can shoot redundant for both stills and video. So it's great that you have the option to shoot redundant. I'm a big fan of having two cards in the camera at all time and being able to shoot RAW to one and RAW to the other and have it backed up, because you never know what might happen, but having the redundancy is important. And the fact that this only has one card slot, just keep that in mind. These cameras are getting 2 check marks each, one for each card slot. Now that we know how fast these cameras can shoot in terms of stills, how long can you shoot with each camera before the buffer fills? The a7C II will allow you to shoot up to 44 RAW files in a row because it has a limited buffer due to that single SD card slot. Now, the a7 IV will give you 828 RAW files, nearly an unlimited buffer if you're using the CF Express Type A card due to the slower frame rates at 10 frames per second. Now, both of these cameras are basically unlimited shooting when it comes to shooting JPEG, but the fact that this thing only shoots at 10 frames per second means it's much harder to outrun it, especially when you have those super fast CF Express A cards. Due to the high frame rate of the a7 V, you're going to get about 40 RAW files when shooting with the electronic shutter at the max 30 frames per second, which gives you just barely over 1 second of shooting before you fill the buffer. But if you switch into compressed RAW, it will jump to 95 RAW files for about 3 seconds of continuous shooting. Now, if you're shooting at that 10 frames per second, you are going to get that unlimited buffer when you're shooting RAW. And of course, with JPEGs, you're basically getting an unlimited buffer as well. Now, I do want to point something out from my real-world usage of the a7 V. It is not the biggest and longest buffer ever, especially if you're doing pre-capture. You have to remember that if you're getting 3 seconds at compressed RAW, which is 95 shots, if you are shooting 1 full second of pre-capture, that means you're getting roughly 2 seconds of shooting after the fact. So all of that pre-capture stuff that you're doing is taking away from your buffer. So keep that in mind when you are shooting. So who's getting a check mark up here? Well, we're going to take one away from the a7C II for only having 1 card slot and not having the deepest buffer. Take that, a7C II. Pew, pew, pew. For those of you who like to shoot in bright sunny days with wide open lenses, what are the max shutter speeds that you can get with these cameras? Now, the a7C II will max out at 1/4000th of a second with the mechanical shutter and 1/8000th with the electronic. The a7 IV will give you 1/8000th of a second in both mechanical and electronic, and the a7 V will give you 1/8000th of a second with the mechanical shutter and 1/16,000th of a second in electronic shutter. This comes in handy when you are shooting those faster 1.2 and 1.4 lenses. So being able to go 1 full stop beyond 1/8000th to 1/16,000th of a second is a big deal. So we're gonna get 1 full stop of a check mark right here. This camera might have an issue if you're trying to use the mechanical shutter and not the electronic shutter, because you're only going to get 1/4000th of a second. Let me cut in here real quick and say, do you struggle getting sharp, crisp images like these in low light situations? If you said yes, I have a free guide to capturing motion in low light situations. Just head on over to froknosphoto.com, look for this orange box, put your name, email address in it, hit send it. I'm going to send you that guide for free. As we move into the focusing systems, this is a spec where the a7C II actually rivals the a7 IV. Remember, it's like 2 years newer. The a7C II has a dedicated AI processor with real-time tracking, which includes humans, animals, birds, insects, cars, trains, planes, but no auto detection mode. Whereas the a7 IV has the same subject detection modes and autofocus as the a7C II, except there is no dedicated AI processor in this camera. You are going to notice a difference between the autofocusing systems between these two bad boys. This camera should have had that AI processor because it was already in existence before it came out, but obviously the pipeline to design these things is much longer and it wasn't included here. So this autofocus feels a little more laggy and a little further behind with locking on and tracking subjects. But with the a7 V, it's a totally different story. It has the dedicated AI processor built directly into the XR2 chip for better subject detection, which includes humans, animals, birds, insects, cars, trains, planes, along with an auto mode this time around. The animal and bird recognition in this camera, thanks to that new XR2 processor, is incredible. This is the first camera from Sony to use that processor, and when I am tracking birds with it, it is fantastic. It finds the eye at a distance. When the bird moves quickly, it tracks it and locks on and stays there and gives you sharp, quality images time and time again, even when you're shooting at that 30 frames per second. This autofocusing system here, in my opinion, is very close to their A9 III and their high-end A1 II's autofocus. So this is absolutely getting the check mark, but of course it's newer, it's better, it is getting the check mark. Now onto video specs, we're gonna start with the A7 IV this time around. The A7 IV offers full-frame UHD 4K video recording up to 30 frames per second, oversampled from 7K in 10-bit 422. It offers cropped Super 35 4K up to 60 frames per second, 1080p up to 120 frames per second, has S-Log 3 with dual base ISOs of 800 and 3200, a digital hot shoe, no AI-based video features, a full HDMI port, and a single USB-C port. The A7C II basically has the same specs as the A7 IV, with the addition of Sony's AI-based options like auto framing, framing stabilizer, and dynamic active mode stabilization. It also only has a micro HDMI port, not full HDMI. Moving on to the A7 V, you can do full-frame UHD 4K video recording up to 60 frames per second, which is oversampled from 7K in 10-bit 422. Now keep in mind that the angle of view priority mode needs to be enabled to capture the full width of the sensor in 4K. I know that might be confusing in this video, but it was important to mention it in case you get this camera, because it will give you cropped 4K if you don't enable it. Continuing on, you get cropped Super 35 4K up to 120 frames per second, 1080p up to 240 frames per second, S-Log 3 with flexible ISO settings and dual base ISOs of 800 and 8000, unlike the 800 and 3200 of the A7 IV. It has a digital hot shoe, AI-based video features like auto framing and framing stabilizer, dynamic active mode stabilization, separate in-camera noise reduction microphone settings, a full HDMI port, dual USB-C ports so that you can charge your camera and stream 4K at the same time. So yeah, they included a lot more video features in the A7 V, and that is to be expected, being that is the latest and greatest. So if you are looking for a camera that's going to be great for stills and video and gives you the most features, of course the newest is going to be the best. The biggest thing here is that this does full frame 4K 60p where these do not. But that doesn't mean you can't get good results with these cameras. It's not always about what the camera can do, it's what you can do with the camera. Now, bringing this back around to rolling shutter, because the A7 V has that partially stacked sensor with that super fast readout speed, you are going to get less jelloing effect and rolling shutter with this camera versus these cameras when you're shooting video. So I think it's pretty obvious who gets a check mark for this one. It's the A7C II. Nope, it's not. It's the A7 V. Gotcha! Moving on to in-body image stabilization. Let's start with the A7C II. It can do up to 7 stops of stabilization with both active mode and dynamic active mode stabilization, whereas the A7 IV can only do up to 5.5 stops of stabilization with only active mode stabilization. The reason you get more stops of stabilization with this is it's much newer. So they made it better because it's a couple of years newer. And lastly, the A7 V gives you up to 7.5 stops of stabilization with both active mode and dynamic active mode stabilization. So what that is doing is combining optical stabilization with some digital stabilization, but that leads to a slight crop in your video. So I know exactly who's getting a check mark here, and it's the A7 V, and it's getting a half a check mark because it's a half better than the A7C II. Let me jump in here again and say, are you tired of sharing your images online and you're looking for actual feedback, but all you get are thumbs up emojis and fire emojis? Well, I want to be your mentor and give you the feedback to help you get better. I offer 2 different types of mentorships, a 15-minute recorded rapid fire critique where I critique your images, and the other is a one-on-one 45-minute Zoom call with me. To sign up right now and to see a few examples of my mentorships, head on over to froknosphoto.com/mentorship, and I hope to be your mentor. And finally, pricing, which of course, if you're price shopping, this is a big deal. The a7C II comes in at $22.98. The a7 IV comes in at $21.98 because it's currently on sale as of right now. And of course, the newest is the most expensive right now. The a7 V is $2,898. So yes, there's a large spread for the prices of these cameras. Now this is a conundrum for people. Now we know that the a7C II is newer than the a7 IV, so it makes sense that it's slightly more expensive. But if you don't want the small body, if you want the redundancy of having 2 card slots, the a7 IV is priced extremely well. If you're not an everyday shooter, you're someone who wants to get great pictures of your kids, or you want to shoot portraits or weddings or sports, it's a competent camera. It's going to get the job done, and the money that you save on this camera body you can put into buying lenses. But keep in mind, it lacks the AI processor. Now, I know it's tough to decide between the a7C II and the a7 IV. If you want to save the money, that's great, but should you maybe spend a couple of $100 more and end up with the best camera up here of the 3? I mean, this is an unbelievable option. I know it's tough to go from $2,200 to $2,900. This is an incredible camera, as well as it should be, and we know that it should have the check mark at this point because it is so freaking good. And obviously, it's the newest camera up here. So which camera up here would you go with and why? Let me know down below. Thank you very much for watching. Jared, PolinFroknosphoto.com. See ya.